God's omniscience. An old preacher once said, "If you have a big God, your troubles become small." So let's do our best to study God. Psalms chapter 131, verse 1 through 3. O Lord, thou hast searched me, and known me. Thou knowest my downsitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thought afar off. Thou compasseth my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Psalms chapter 147, verse 5. Great is our Lord, and of great power. His understanding is infinite. Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 5. And the Spirit of the Lord fell upon me, and said unto me, Speak, thus saith the Lord. Thus have ye said, O house of Israel, for I know the things that come into your mind, every one of them. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 13. Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in his sight, but all things are naked and opened unto the eyes of him with whom we have to do. After this sermon, I want you to be blown away at one of the most wonderful and quite frankly scariest attributes of God, his omniscience. When we say God is omniscient, we mean that he knows everything that there is to know. He is all-knowing. Think about it. There are no secrets to him. There is nothing that is outside the scope of his wisdom, understanding, or attention. His knowledge is perfect. For you and I to learn, we have to study or go through an experience. But God doesn't. He knows everything. There is never anything that ever happened or that will ever happen that God is unaware of. More so, there is nothing that can defy the understanding and wisdom of the Most High. He knows everything about everyone. He knows everything about you. Not the you present to others, the real you. Not the you present at church. He knows the real you. A man once said, I've been married to my wife for 43 years, and there is still stuff about her that surprises me. There is nothing you can do in your life that will surprise God. He is all-knowing. God has never been surprised. Never in the history of God has he had to say, well, I didn't see that coming. God knows everything about everyone. Before you make a decision, God knew what you would decide, and God knew the repercussions of your decision. Not only does he know the repercussions of your decision, he knows every single possible repercussion for every single decision you could have made. God sees everything at all times. There is no secret society of God is not aware of. There is no sin that God is not aware of. There is no place God is not aware of. God knows everything and sees everything. I wonder at the way many people think they can hide from God and do things without his awareness. God made us in the excellence of his wisdom, and he gave us just a little fraction of his ability. It therefore baffles me how humans think they can make a fool of God with a little fraction of his in them. God does not need to leave heaven to know what is going on in the earth realm. His eyes are everywhere, and his wisdom is all-encompassing. The Bible records the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of men. We have become so self-sufficient and smart as a society that many people think that they've outgrown God. We have billionaires introducing self-driving cars that park themselves. We have artificial intelligence slowly being shifted into our lives. We are all connected by the internet. You are probably listening to me right now through the internet. Civilization has taken so many leaps and bounds and has even moved to space exploration. Through our atmosphere and into the heavens, we are even aiming for the colonization of Mars. Mankind has taken on great leaps and bounds. We are living in a futuristic society. Humanity really thinks it is the apex of knowledge. Slowly and slowly, we can see more and more people believing we as a society have outgrown God. The irony is that we only know what God allows us to know. The wisest people, philosophers, and teachers of the law do not even come close next to the wisdom and power of the Lord. Our wisdom and our intelligence does not compete even on our best of days. God is in a league of his own. In the excellency of God's wisdom, he does not need to ask questions before he knows what is within the heart of a man. When Prophet Samuel wanted to anoint Eliab as king over Israel, the Lord forbade him, saying, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but I, the Lord, looks at the heart." God is never limited by the physical appearance of people. He sees deep into their hearts and knows the thoughts which they conceive in their minds. God cannot be limited by any physical barrier. He knows all things, and his wisdom cannot be superseded. King David took his time to study the personality of the Most High, and he came to the realization of the fact that God was acquainted with his ways. He knew and understood that none of his actions were hidden from God. When David committed adultery with Uriah's wife and murdered Uriah just to conceal his sins, God exposed him. If you go beneath the earth to commit sin, the wisdom of God will follow you up. There is nothing done in the secret that will not be brought to limelight. If David had known this earlier, he would have probably not have fallen into such sins. There is a wisdom that follows every action of a man. It is the wisdom of God. Psalms chapter 139 verse 4 through 6 says, "For there is not a word in my tongue, but lo, O Lord, thou knowest it altogether. Thou hast beset me behind and before, and laid thine hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it." You don't need to speak before God will hear your voice. The thoughts of our hearts are very loud in the hearing of God. The people of Israel grumbled in their hearts against God while they journeyed through the wilderness, and he knew it. A person could see you keeping quiet while before God your voice of complaint is very loud in your heart. You may not be complaining out loud to God, but inwardly you are complaining and angry with God. By the omniscience of God, everything that happens on earth is being captured. Nothing is hidden from him. David admitted that the knowledge of God is too wonderful to be fathomed. It is too high to be obtained. The Bible does not reveal a God who sits on the edge of his throne, anxiously awaiting man's next move in order that he might take a counter move. God is not nervous about your next move. God has always known all things which will take place. The omniscience of God is so high that he would perfectly determine the end of a thing before it ever begins. God does not have the feeling of insecurity that many people have. He sits in heaven and does whatever pleases him. He doesn't have to keep moving around like the devil to know what is happening anywhere. The moment the devil thought in his heart to exalt his throne above the throne of God, his conspiracy was uncovered and he was cast out from heaven. The devil thought he had known all about God because of his proximity to the throne of the Most High. He never knew that God's wisdom is enshrined in mysteries. If the devil that had a close proximity to the throne of God was esteemed foolish, how much more a man that thinks he can deceive God would be foolish. Psalms chapter 147 verse 4 through 5 talks of the excellent wisdom of God. It says, "He telleth the number of the stars. He calleth them all by their names. Great is our Lord, and of great power. His understanding is infinite. Up till now, science and technology put together has not been able to determine the number of stars that are in the space. But the Lord, who excels in wisdom, knows them all by name. There are over 2 billion galaxies of stars in the space, and yet God could number and name them. Jesus said that God knows the very number of the strands of hair we have on our heads. You can imagine how versatile our God is. There is no amount of words that can explain His wisdom. Christ sent a letter to the church in Ephesus with the opening word, "I know your works." If you are just a believer by name and not by action, God knows. If you were serving Him out of hypocrisy, He knows. You cannot hide anything from God's knowledge. You may cover your sins and your pastor would not know, but you can never hide from God. More so, if you have been faithful in your walk with God, He knows too and will reward you at the fullness of time. James chapter 1 verse 5 says that God is the custodian of wisdom. It is He that gives wisdom to all that lacks it. There is no wisdom elsewhere other than in God. God knows all things. He knows your trials and your endurance. He knows your pains and your afflictions. What may surprise you in your life did not surprise God. Have faith in God.